Well, welcome, David Pleasance. Thanks for being here.
It's a great pleasure. I like being interviewed, uh, mainly because I'm a terrible liar. And the reason I say that is that I can't remember things, so I can't remember what lies I've told. So I've found that all my life it's easier to just tell the truth.
Well, you started off in the world of music, didn't you? You're in a band. Well, what took you into business from that?
Well, actually, I kind of wasn't in a band. Well, maybe I was. What happened was that I left England when I was about 17, just
Mm.
almost 18. I was fed up of England and my family, and so I went to Australia to live. I lived in Sydney for about 2.5 years, which was fantastic, especially because at that time it was the 60s and it was everything British was amazingly famous. It was the Beatles and Carnaby Street and all the Australian girls loved everybody English. It was it was a perfect time of my life. Anyway, cut a long story short, I ended up moving up to Brisbane in Queensland, and it's a long story, which I won't tell it, but I heard somebody playing flamenco guitar in a folk club, and it absolutely blew my mind. It's to such an extent that I became obsessed. I had to learn it, and I had to master it. So I was having lessons, and on the 5 days a week when I was working, I was practicing 12 hours a day. And on the weekend, I was practicing maybe 16 hours a day. It was incredible. The net result is that after about 14 months, I was playing in a restaurant, and that was how I made my living.
Mm.
Um, anyway, what happened was that when I first heard the flamenco being played, I said it was in the folk club. So I used to go there quite regularly, and I met a couple of guys there. One guy was called Robbie Robinson, and he was a mainly banjo player, and he used to sing all George Formby style sort of music.
Mm.
And the other guy, David Beresford, he was a guy that you put a guitar in his hands and ask him to sing anything, he could do it. He's just one of those people that can play anything, really well
Mm.
and sing. So anyway, we started sort of getting on stage together. And one day we started getting quite a few bookings. And then one day this guy rang up and he said, "Look, I want to advertise you guys. What are you called? What's your band name?" And we hadn't got a band name.
Mm.
So we sat around and we thought, what on earth can we call ourselves? Anyway, the net result was that we ended up calling ourselves Dr. D, Dr. D Review, because it was Dave, Robbie, and Dave. That's how it came about. Now I must tell you this story because this is incredible. Is that in uh, January of 1992, having been with Commodore several years, I was sent to the US as Vice President of Consumer Products. And my very first day in the office, I said, "Where's my office?" And they pointed it to a corner. So as I was walking to this corner, the office next to me, the door was open, and the guy said, "Oh, it's the doctor. It's Doctor D." And my hair stood up on the back of my neck because I thought, "What does he know? About my background." So I walked in and I said, "What did you just call me?" He said, "I called you Doctor D." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because that's what the company calls you." He said, every time there's a problem somewhere for the doctor and you fix it. No, it's a complete and utter fluke coincidence, but isn't that weird?
That's weird, isn't
That really is.
it?
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, so that was my band involvement, if you like, because I played flamenco, and what we were doing in the folk club was just doing all sorts of different, which is why we called ourselves the Dr. D Review, because we did comedy and we did flamenco guitar and all sorts of different styles. Um, but that was the extent that I was involved in the band. After that, I set up my own dance company with two girl dancers and a singer and another guitarist, and we did lots of cabaret and stuff, and that was quite fun. So I did loads of television in Australia, television all the time. And in fact, I must tell you the story. While I was learning to play flamenco, the guy who was teaching me, Peter Williamson, His wife Robin was a dancer. And anyway, I was having a lesson this one particular Saturday. My lessons are always Saturday around about 12 o'clock. And I'd finished my lesson, and he started to get dressed, ready to go to do a gig, and his wife was getting ready. And while I was waiting for them, I was just playing a rhythm. And he comes steaming out of the room, and he says, "Where did you learn that? I didn't teach you that." And I said, "No, I've been watching you." And he said, "Well, you're not doing it right." And he just showed me just some slight amendment, whatever it was. Anyway, after a few minutes of me playing it, he comes out again. He says, "Have you got the black shirt and black trousers and a white shirt?" I said, "I think so." Yeah. He said, "Well, go and get changed. You're doing your first live gig today." So I said, "What's going on?" He said, "Well," he said, "we've got a gig this afternoon." He said, "You know, Robin dances." He said, "I've got this other guy, Dutch guy called Jan de Zwaan. Now, Jan can either play second guitar, rhythm guitar, or he can sing flamenco, but they can't do both together because it's very difficult to do that."
Mm,
So he said, "If you can play the rhythm that you're playing, what we've just been playing, for this thing, then Jan can sing, and that gives us a more complete performance."
mm.
So I said, "Fine." And anyway, what he didn't tell me was that my very first ever live performance was television. I had
God.
no idea, I must swear to you. It was New Faces
Ah, right.
in Australia, and we in Brisbane, and we went on and we won it.
Jeez.
No, but what that meant was that about 3 weeks later, we get flown down to Sydney, met with this big limo, taken to a five-star hotel, treated like royalty,
Mm.
and we performed in Sydney. We came second in Sydney. But I thought to myself, I could get used to this life. This is amazing. So that made me work harder, you see. That's the
Mm,
whole point. Um, but funnily enough, both my sons are musicians, and they have got their own band, and
mm,
they're phenomenal. They're really great musicians. Particularly my eldest son, Marcel. He writes all the material, he does all the arrangements, plays several instruments. He's really really good.
mm.
Well, I can't even play anymore because I've now got arthritis in my hands, and
Uh,
so I can't play, which is a real tragedy for me.
yeah. How did all this lead into business, and when did you decide to hang up your guitar?
Yeah, well, that again is an interesting story in that I. I left Australia, and I came back to England to stay for just for a couple of weeks to catch up with my family
Mm,
on my way to Spain to study more. And in the meantime, my parents had moved because I was born in Great Yarmouth, and my parents moved to Shrewsbury. My father, who was an electronics engineer, he bought a shop, and so I went there, and within a couple of weeks, I'd met the lady who became my first wife. And that kind of changed everything, as you can imagine.
mm.
So anyway, we go to Spain, and that was a disaster because she hated every minute of it, and I loved every minute of it. It was just one of those things. So anyway, we came back to the UK. So I got a job teaching at Shrewsbury Public School, one of the top five schools in the country,
Mm,
teaching guitar about two and a half days a week. I had about 30 private students. I played in a restaurant in Shrewsbury 2 nights a week, Friday and
mm,
Saturday night. And every now and again we'd do cabaret with my dance company. And we do all sorts of cabaret all over the UK. And life was bliss for me. It was just fantastic. Anyway, one day my wife says to me, "I want you to get a real job or else." Now I should have said F off, but I didn't, as you know.
mm.
So I sat there, as God is my witness, I sat there and I said to myself, "David, what on earth can you do?" I had no qualifications at all. When I went to Australia as a teenager, I did any job that I needed to do to survive. I dug trenches. I was a scaffolder for a while. I was even a bus conductor for 6 months in Sydney, and I had absolutely no skills whatsoever. Now, this is as true as I'm sitting here talking to you now. About 3 days after my wife had told me to get a real job or else. A guy walked into my dad's. I used to help my dad. My dad, when he was alive, bless him, when I was about 2 or 3 years old, he had a motorbike accident. He was on the back of a bike, and they got sideswiped by a car, and his knee was crushed. And
Mm.
in those days, they didn't have artificial kneecaps. So his leg was permanently straight, stiff. And as such, this was at the time when color televisions had just been released. And if you remember, they were massive, wooden,
Mm.
heavy things, really. And he could hardly even carry them because of his leg. So I used to pop into the shop every now and again and just give him a hand. Anyway, about 3 days after I've been told to get a real job, this guy comes into the shop and he said, David, come and have a coffee with me. And I said, sure. Sat down. He said, my name's Phil Evans. He said, I'm the manager of the Practical Credit Services finance company branch office here. He said, your dad uses our finance to sell stuff,
Mm.
domestic appliances and things like that. He said, we're doing very well, and I've been told I need to get an assistant manager. He says, I come into the shops a few times. He said, and I really love the way that you are with people. Would you like the job? I mean,
Mm.
this is 3 days. I swear to you on my life, it's the truth.
Mm.
So, of course, I ripped his arm off, I needed the job. Anyway, so that's how I got into selling into retail because that was what the job entailed was basically practical credit services were part of the Provident Group, and Provident had these shops all over these offices all over the country, and they owned practical credit services. So their objective was to open a practical credit service office in every place where the Provident was.
Yeah.
So they owned their own opposition, if you like. That was the idea. So anyway, I did really, really well. I just took to it like a duck to water. And within 6 months, they'd made me a manager in training. And I had to travel all over the country learning from all of the different managers, what they did and what they didn't do, sort of thing. And anyway, then they got me to open some branches. I opened Crewe, for example. So I had to go to Crewe. I had to find some potential premises, hand all that information to the property department, and
Mm.
then I had to go and recruit the retailers to accept the financial services, the checks that allowed them to sell. And then I had to recruit staff to run it all. Particularly, we used to have ladies who collected the money every week.
Yeah.
And anyway, what happened is that I'd been itching really to take my first wife, Sheila, her name Sheila, she was English, not Australian, to take her to Australia. And it just happened that we went to London. She got a day off to go shopping. She worked in Barclays Bank. She got a day off to go shopping, and we decided to go to London. By this time, I was living in Sheffield. I was actually area manager in Sheffield. And we decided we were going to call into Australia House because we'd heard that they were going to introduce some new visa restrictions.
Mm.
So we popped into Australia House, and they said basically, if you don't get in by midnight on the 31st of December, you won't get in. And this was, I think, the 18th of December.
Uh,
Right. Anyway, we were like, didn't know what to do. So anyway, like I said, first thing is let's see if we can get a flight. If we can't get a flight, there's no point in doing anything else, right?
mm.
So we managed to find a flight. And then the trouble was that Sheila working in the bank, she's supposed to give a couple of months' notice.
Mm.
And obviously I had to tell her parents I was going to take their daughter away. She wouldn't even be there for Christmas.
Yeah.
So anyway, I went with her to the bank manager's office, her office, and explained everything. And the bank manager said, he said, kids, I remember the word, he said, kids, he said, if I was a few years younger, I'd be on the plane with you, right? So he said, leave it with me. I will sort everything. Don't you worry about it. So we ended up, we managed to get to Australia in time. We landed 2 days before they closed. And uh, my first job I got there was actually with the building society. It was selling investments. It was a bit dodgy, I think. I wasn't very comfortable. But the guy that I worked with, he was desperately unhappy there and he wanted to get a new job. And I spotted a job in the newspaper that I said, oh, this might suit you. And so he rang up. There was a Sydney office number, but the job was based in Brisbane. Anyway, he rang them up and he got an appointment to go and see them. And so we went for an interview. And it was a mass interview with about, I don't know, 40 people or something. And they did a presentation to him about what the whole job was about and so on and so forth. And anyway, he didn't like it, so he left early. So he came back to the office and he started to tell me what the job was. And the job was 11 banks in Australia got together and they formed the Australia's first mass market credit card. This is before Visa and MasterCard were in Australia,
Oh, okay.
right? And the company was called Charge Card Services. The product was called Bank Card. And basically, all the 11 banks lent a lot of staff for 3 months or 6 months or 9 months to get the thing launched. But Bank Card wanted four permanent people. And so once I found out what the job was, I rang Sydney and I said, "Hey, what's going on? You've got all these interviews going, and where's
Mm.
my application?" "Well, Mr. Pleasance, we must have lost it." I hadn't even put it in, of course, you know. But anyway, I said, "Look, don't worry. We're doing the second round of interviews in 2 days' time. I'll book you in for that."
Mm.
So I went straight into the second round of interviews and got the job. Now,
Mm.
this job came with a 1% mortgage.
Wow.
It came with a brand new, fully expensed Ford Falcon car, the biggest car you can get,
Mm.
and an unlimited expense account. It was unbelievable. Now, I stayed with Bank Card for about 5 years. And then I made the decision that I wanted to improve my CV. I wanted to start selling tangibles instead of
Mm.
intangibles.
Yeah.
So I searched around and I ended up getting a job with 3M Company, who, as you know, at that time, they were, I think, the 26th largest company in the world.
Mm.
And they had 87,000 products.
Oh,
So, yeah, so the job I got was fantastic. I was looking after all the major retailers and selling to them. But they said to me, "Look, David, we've got 87,000 products. Most of them we think are industrial products, but there may be some that could be consumer products.
mm.
And, with your background, would you ever look and see if there's anything and you can put a recommendation to us and then we can launch a new product from our range?" So I looked into everything and I found this amazing product that they had, which was called Nomad Matting. Now, you love this story. This nomad matting came about because the mafia in the US,
Mm.
they went to 3M and they said, "Look, we have a problem." "What's that?" "The problem is," they said, "we keep opening these new nightclubs and casinos and we spend an absolute fortune to put brand new carpeting down. And after just a few days, the carpets are ruined.
Mm.
And, can you help us?" So 3M did some research and they discovered that with a normal doormat, when the first person goes and stands on it and wipes his feet, he leaves all that dirt behind and walks in with clean shoes. But the stuff stays on the top, and the next person comes in, picks it up, and takes it in.
Right.
So
Right.
they designed this product called Nomad Matting, which is loops. It was like a vinyl, very quite high loops. So when you walked on it, everything fell to the bottom and left the top
Uh,
clear.
yeah.
Very clever. However, they only made it in massive big pieces for nightclubs and things. So I put a proposal that we make uh, consumer home size doormats and we hang sell them and sell them along with Scotch Guard and all the other Scotch products that 3M had.
Mm.
So they went ahead with that, and I won the managing director's award for that because
Mm.
I was given the opportunity. Now that led on to 3M are very famous for their magnetic tapes, particularly cassette tapes,
Yeah.
and also the 3-inch masking tapes for recording. And anyway, they were going to launch the world's first metal particle tape, which was called Metafine. And so they said to me, "Could I do a plan to launch this Metafine?" So I looked at the whole thing. Of course, they've got low ferric and high ferric and all sorts of different models of cassettes. So I said, "Well, let's do a complete relaunch of the whole brand." So what I did was I came up with a booklet, and the title of the booklet was Scotch Tapes, The Truth Comes Out. It's very
Right.
clever, right? And so as a result of that, we relaunched the whole range. And I went to the hi-fi manufacturers at the time, because basically I had software, they had hardware.
Mm.
And I said, "Why don't we do some joint promotions, you and I and the retailers, and we share the cost three ways?"
Hmm.
which is exactly what we did. And it was very, very successful. And as a result of that, I got headhunted by Pioneer Electronics.
Right.
Right. Now, the interesting thing was, of course, is that at 3M with that Metafine tape, that was one of the technical advances that, and I happened to be part of the launch of it, which by
Hmm.
luck. While I was at Pioneer, we launched the Laserdisc, which
Ah,
was
okay.
another high tech product.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'd not been at Pioneer very long when we had our first child, and that triggered my wife wanting to come back to the UK.
Yeah.
So I gave up my job at Pioneer, which was hard to do because they'd appointed me sales manager, which was pretty damn good. So what we did is we had a couple of weeks holiday in Thailand, and then I put my wife and son on a plane back to London, and I spent the next 7 weeks traveling the world to see what was going to be the next best thing.
Hmm.
And I went all over the world. And it was obvious to me then that computing, and particularly home computing, was going to be the next thing. So when I got back to the UK, which was in early 83, remember there's no internet.
Hmm. Yeah.
In those days, all the jobs were in the newspapers. Thursday's newspapers and Sunday's newspapers is where all the jobs were. So what I did was I scoured every job, and any job that had the word computer or computing in it, I applied for. I had no experience. I knew nothing about computers whatsoever. Anyway, I managed after about 40 minutes to persuade this one guy that advertised, I think from memory it was computer services. I can't honestly remember, but anyway, I managed to persuade him. He was a recruitment agent in London to give me an interview. So I go to this interview and I can remember it like it was yesterday. As I arrived at this place, there was a lady leaving, and I remember holding the door open for her.
Hmm.
So I walked in straight into the interview. I guess it was 40 minutes, 45 minutes, something like that. And at the end of the interview, the recruitment agent said, David, he said, you could do this job standing on your head, but I'm not going to put you forward for it. I said, oh, thanks a lot. He said, no, hear me out. He said, you have got the best retail CV I've ever seen in
Hmm.
30 years in this industry. He said, it would be really remiss of me not to try to get you into a position that utilizes your skills. I couldn't argue with that. I got up to leave. He said, sit your ass down. He said, did you see a lady leaving? I said, yeah. He
Hmm.
said, well, she's just given me a brief for a job that I think you would be perfect for. And she is from Commodore. And the job she's given me a brief for is that Commodore want to launch their pet range of products into the retail market.
Yeah.
And they don't know, should they get a computer expert who knows nothing about retail or a retail expert who knows nothing about computers? He said, and my recommendation to her was get a retail expert because people can learn about products, but learning about the retail business is very different. So 3 days later, I'm sitting across the table in Brown's Hotel with this lady, and we had this interview. 2 days after that, I'm in front of the MD in the Commodore, and I got the job. I mean, what a fluke that was! A complete and utter fluke. So lucky. However, that's when I joined them in June of '83, and that's when, within a few weeks, I knew eventually they were going to go bust. And do you
Right.
know how I knew? I'll tell you how I knew. They had no business plan
Hmm.
ever. And the reason I know that is because I was specifically recruited to sell Commodore pets
Hmm.
into the retail market. So what I said to them was, when I first arrived, I said, look, what I'd like to do, because I've been out of the country for 4 or 5 years, is I'd like to reacquaint myself with the retail market, see who's what and who's who,
Yeah.
so I know who we end up going with initially. Anyway, I did my research and it was pretty obvious to me. Do you remember a company called Lasky's?
Yes. Yes, I do.
Yeah. Well, Lasky's, they had 54 shops,
Hmm.
and in 26 of them, they had a store within a store, which was called Micropoint.
Yeah.
And they were selling business products. They were selling copiers and printers and software and stuff. They weren't selling computers at the time. So I went to their head office and met the MD and said, "Look, we're going to bring out a new product. Could I would you give me permission to interview the managers of your micropoint stores? Because I'd like to get their opinion. Actually, all I was doing was pre-selling.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was in store number 24 out of 26. I had two more left to go. Remember, there's no mobile phones in those days.
Mm.
And I got a call from the lady that recruited me, Eileen Stroud was her name. She rang me up and she said, David, how I told you at our interview that things in Commodore move really quickly. I said, yeah. She said, well, we've just had notification from Commodore head office that they're not making any more pets.
Oh God.
So that's when I knew they hadn't got a business plan, clearly, because I'd been recruited to sell the product they're no longer going to make. But anyway, she said, but you're lucky, she said, because in the consumer division, where we've got the VIC-20 and the recently released 64, it's going crazy. She said, we have a sales manager there, Paul Welsh, and we have a national accounts manager who looks after the big accounts. And that guy is leaving. So you're going to be it. You're going to take over as national accounts manager in the
Mm.
consumer division because I had all the experience for it. Now, interestingly, Paul Welsh, the manager, hated me. Why? Because he didn't pick me.
Ah, I see.
I was made to go to him, right?
Mm.
The fact, how good I was didn't come into it. He hated me from day one. Anyway, that leads into another story, which not long after that we moved to Corby. We built a big purpose-built premises. We bought a 10-acre site, and we had assembly there, and we had warehousing and distribution and sales and marketing and service and everything all under the one roof. Now, the managing director of Commodore in London in Slough, um, Howard Stanworth, and the marketing director John, I can't think of his surname. They decided not to move because they'd got children at school and everything, and they
Yeah.
weren't quite settled. So we ended up getting a new managing director in Commodore at Corby. And this guy was called Nick Bessie, and he was really, really good. He he was ex-IBM, he was IBM marketing guy,
Mm.
and he was really super smart. Anyway, within a couple of days, he said, I want to spend a day with you. I said, okay. So we spent the whole day. Now, I'd got an appointment booked with the co-op in Wilmslow, Cheshire, the head
Oh.
office. And that had been booked for a couple of weeks. Anyway, on the way there, he said to me, right, what's going on in your division? And I said, well, everything's really hunky-dory, except that for some reason, and I don't know why, our customers hate Paul Welsh. They don't like him. I don't know why. He
Mm.
said, oh, I think you're exaggerating a bit, aren't you? I said, well, I don't think so. Anyway, we walked into the co-op in Wilmslow, and the marketing director, Peter, came down to sign us in. The first thing he said was, hello, David. He said, you haven't got that bastard Welsh with you, have you? And so Nick Bessie looked at me as if to say, you set this up, you bastard. And of course, I hadn't said it. First of all, I didn't know until 5 o'clock the night before that Nick was going to be with me that day.
Mm.
And that appointment had been made 2 weeks before. Anyway, Nick says, he said, would you mind telling me why you said that? And Peter said, he said, that bastard's not going to set foot in this building again. And Nick said, why? And he said, look, he said, you guys agreed to do some stock balancing for us. And we've been waiting for a credit note for a long, long time. He said, Paul Welsh was in here 10 days ago. And I was on my way into a board meeting. And I asked him about it. And he assured me to me faithfully that I would have a credit note within a couple of days. He said, so I went into the board meeting and told him that, and it's not arrived. He's not coming in here anymore ever again.
Jeez.
So, so that really set the scene. So the next thing I know, I mean, remember I'd only been there a few months. The next thing I know, Paul Welsh gets fired, rightfully so, to be
Mm.
honest. And so Nick Bessie says to me, right on the way back, actually, before I knew he was getting fired, he said, who is there within the company who could take over Paul's role? And I'd not been there long enough, and I certainly wouldn't have put myself forward at that time. And I said, well, actually, there is a guy called Tom Hart. Tom Hart, he said, Tom Hart is in the accounts department. I said, yeah. He So, well, why on earth would you put him forward? I said, well, two reasons. First of all, our customers love him. And they've been dealing with him for years and years. They trust him in every way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Secondly, I said, Tom and I have become quite close friends. And he mentioned to me that he'd love to get into the sales department. So the next thing I know, Tom is my boss, which was perfect for me. Okay. Anyway, the reason I mentioned all of this is because, as you know, Paul Welsh was very close to to the Jack Jamil henchman. Jack Jamil had a few guys that were his, uh, I guess, two ICs, and one of them was a very close friend of Paul, and uh, so the next thing you know is that after some time, Paul joined Atari
Right.
because Jack Jamil had bought Atari, and his henchmen were recruited, and they recruited Paul back. Now, of course, they launched the 520 ST a long, long time to sell because we launched the 1000, which, as you know, was not a games product, too expensive, and it wasn't a sufficiently good video, a professional video product. It was in between. So what happened is that when eventually I got the 500, Paul Welsh was my target.
Right.
So
Right. Yeah.
I had a personal reason, not just to outsell the 520 ST, but to make absolutely sure I crucified them. So first thing I did was the Batman pack, which that took 7 months to organize, as you probably realize. So when we first got the 500, we just sold it on its own.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, I set up the Batman pack. And for those people who don't know, I only committed to 10,000 pieces because it was an unknown. We had no idea it was going to work or
Can I
not.
just stop you there? So just to explain to the people watching, if you don't know, so round about the early 80s, we just got own computers. Own computers were very new, and you just bought them individually. And it was never sort of seen before that when you bought a computer, you didn't get games with it. You might get like a little welcome cassette or something like that, but you didn't actually get games. So your idea was to package a computer with free games, like a games pack. Is that
Yeah,
correct,
well, I
Jack?
did. Yeah, I
Yeah,
did that
yeah.
with the 64.
Oh, right, yeah,
Yeah, I did that with the 64 first. And what we did is we did a new pack every 6 months
right.
to keep it the 64 fresh. And it really worked. I mean, it was phenomenal. I had one failure, which was I put a keyboard from a Casio, I think it was, uh, and that was an absolute failure. So brought them all back. I ended up selling those keyboards. There was a guy called Howard Stroman, his company was called PST, and that was because it was, "Psst, have I got a deal for you?" Right?
Ah, I see.
And he reckons I'm the only person in his whole career who's ever stitched him up. And that was with these keyboards. That's another story. Anyway, yeah. So I came up with the concept of we don't sell computers, we sell dreams.
Mm,
And we did with 64 every 6 months we put out a new pack, and it was very, very successful. Um, and I think we kept the 64 alive 2 years beyond its true sell by date
yeah.
in the UK. That, for some reason, Commodore would not make the other subsidiaries do the same thing. I don't know why. I tried very hard, but anyway, so that's where the concept came from. So then when we did the Batman pack, as I said, I only committed to 10,000 pieces. And I remember Ocean Software had just come back from Hollywood. They just paid $1 million for the license to use the name Batman the movie.
Right.
Never mind about making the game, $1 million just for the license. So I went to them and I said, gentlemen, I've got a proposal to make to you that you'll either have the balls to go with, or you'll send for the men in the white coats to drag me away. Right?
Mm,
What do you want to do? I said, right. I said, I want to launch a bundle which is called the Batman Pack. And the fact that there is an Amiga 500 inside will be incidental. There'll be a picture of it, but we are promoting Batman the movie. And I said, basically, the deal is I want to pay very little for it,
mhm.
and I want you to give it to me. When's it going to be ready? And they said, we think in September. I said, fine. I said, I want you to give it to me for 2 months exclusively. You cannot buy it over the counter on its own. And I only want to commit to 10,000 pieces. So the first reaction was send for the men in the white coats, of
Mm.
course. So anyway, they had a chat among themselves and they said, David, look, we've got some concerns. We've just paid out $1 million. We've estimated it's going to cost us $1 million to make the game. And on that basis, we know how many we have to sell to break even.
Mm.
And we've estimated what we would like to sell. And we are afraid that this activity will affect those numbers. They said, we also think our dealers are going to be really upset.
Mm.
And I said, okay, well, so let's talk about the dealers first. I said, if this works the way I think it's going to work, your dealers will only be upset for a couple of days because they will start selling a £400 product vis-a-vis a £40 product in
Mm.
volume. And I said, if I was a retailer, I know what I'd prefer to be selling, right? Okay. And I said, as far as your numbers are concerned, I said, remember, I have a much bigger marketing budget than you do, and my marketing budget is going to go on promoting Batman Pack. And I'm going to work, we will work with your artists so that everything we do is in unison and harmony. So ultimately, they had the balls to go with it. And what I predicted was true. The dealers were upset literally for a couple of days, and then they
Mm.
changed their mind. Ocean sold 5 times their highest estimate.
Oh, right.
And I didn't take 10,000 pieces from them. I took 186,000 pieces because that's how many Batman packs we sold in 12 weeks.
Bloody hell.
And that is what got me my promotion to sales and marketing director, which I damn well deserved, I think, to be honest with you. But very interestingly, it was only a month later that the job became vacant as a general manager at Commodore Electronics Limited, which was the holding company of the whole group, based in Basel in Switzerland,
Mm.
and looking after countries where we didn't have an operating subsidiary. And they were I took over 35 countries, which, and of course that was the most perfect job for me because I love travel and I'm a
Mm.
hunter. I'm very much a hunter. So to have 35 countries to have a go at was amazing. And for me, it was quite easy to, I shouldn't under value it, but it's quite easy for me to improve the turnover very substantially in that side of things. But of course, what that gave me was a wider perspective of Commodore than just being in one company.
Mm.
The UK turned out to be the strongest business of all. We beat Germany hands down all the time, even though the president Mediali kept telling me that Germany was beating us. I knew that they weren't, but I
Mm.
subsequently been able to verify the fact. Anyway, so I was at CEO for 2 years, and literally, was it literally the anniversary of me? I went there in January of 1990, and in January of 1992, I was at a general managers meeting in Frankfurt, where all the general managers were. We finished our meeting about midday, and I got up to leave, and he said, "Pleasant, sit your ass down." He said, "I'm going to give you your wish." I said, "What wish is that, Mehdi?" He said, "You've been telling me for ages that you want to go into the US and kick ass because they're not doing very well." I said, "You bet I do." He said, "Right." He said, "I want you on the 7 o'clock flight out of London today."
Right.
And I'm in
Mm.
Frankfurt at midday. So anyway, he said, "No excuses. Go upstairs to the admin office here and tell them that to book you on the 7 o'clock flight out of London." Now, what he'd forgotten, because he did it all the time, the 7 o'clock flight out of London was Concorde.
Ah.
So I got to fly Concorde once, which was
Mm.
pretty damned amazing. Anyway, the reason they sent me was that Commodore was selling nothing in the US. I mean, they'd stopped selling anything. So when I arrived, I find this really bizarre. I went, the first thing I did when I flew out there, I had to go to the CES in Las Vegas because Commodore had got a stand there. But as soon as that was over, every year it's in January. I think it's always around the 4, 5, 6 of January. We immediately I went to Westchester. And my first thing I did when I walked into the Westchester office is I went to see the engineers. Now, at that time, this is January of 1992, we had seven engineers, Amiga engineers, who between them, I think they had three, maybe four junior engineers. But we had, get this, we had 40 PC engineers
Right.
on the payroll.
Mm.
And who in their right mind would ever in 92 have your own PC engineers when they're coming out of the Far East, for tuppence,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
Now, I never understood. I found out subsequently what happened. But anyway, so I had three sales reps, and I think a couple of marketing people. Sat them down. I said, "All right, what's happening?" I said, "Why aren't you selling anything?" We're not allowed to. What do you mean you're not allowed to? We're not allowed to sell anything to any of our customers because they haven't paid their bills. And I said, "Why?" And they said, "We don't know." I said, "Well, this is a bit strange." I said, "Look, I've got to get to the bottom of this. Whatever happens, we've got to start from the ground up."
Mm.
So I said to my guys, "Make some appointments." It just happened that the very first appointment that was made was with Sears in Chicago.
Mm.
So my rep for that area was Steve Salas, I remember. And we went to meet up with Sears. And we were up in the boardroom. I think we were on the 12th floor. And I was sitting around the boardroom table. There's about 10 Sears guys, Steve and me. So I introduced myself. I said, "I'm David Pleasance. I'm from Commodore UK. I've been in Commodore International, Commodore Electronics. Been with Commodore about 9 years. I've been asked to come to the US to try and get us trading again because obviously things aren't working out too well. I'll be very honest with you if you'll be honest with me. Let's see if we can get to the bottom of it." So I said, "Can we start? Would you mind telling me why you're not paying your bill?" "Well," I said, "it's obvious, Mr. President. We're waiting for you to come and take all of our stock back," which absolutely shocked me. So I said, "In 9 years, I don't think I've ever known Commodore to be a lending library." At which point in time, they pushed a piece of paper across the boardroom table to me, signed, signed by Jim Dion, who was the president of Commodore Inc., the
Mm.
sales company, "Sale or return," signed by him.
Jeez.
And he had stuffed Sears to the gunnels with a product that they had no hope in hell of selling, which was, guess what?
+4?
No,
Okay. What was it?
CDTV.
Oh, right. Okay.
Like, can you imagine? I mean, the staff in Sears are bankrupt now anyway. They were hard pushed in ringing something up on a till and putting it in a plastic bag. That
Yeah.
was the extent of their knowledge. So for them to try to sell a product like the CDTV, which technical people found it difficult to sell, it was impossible. I mean, it was just ridiculous. It should never have happened. And that absolutely floored me. I thought, what the hell am I going to do? Because this is signed by the president of the company. I've got to honor it. See, Jim Dion was told I was reporting to him, but I was told I'm not. I'm reporting directly to Mehdi Ali, but just pretend I'm reporting to Jim. So anyway, I had to really think quickly on my feet, and I said, "Gentlemen," I said, "I'll be honest with you." I said, "You should never have been sold that product. It's completely and utterly wrong profile for your
Mm.
company, and
Yeah.
I apologize in advance." And I said, "Of course, I will take them back. It's
Mm.
contracted and so on and so forth." I said, "However, um, what you should be selling is the Amiga 500 because
Mm.
that is a product that it's selling like hotcakes over in Europe in stores just like yours." I said, "Look, I don't really want to start my US career with a big negative on my books." I said, "If I take all your CDTVs back, would you give me an order to the same value so
Mm.
that there's no difference of Amiga 500s? And if you do that, I will give you your own Sears pack,"
Yeah.
which they went for. And every retailer in the US, major retailer, had been stitched up the same.
Right. Right.
So I went and I sorted everybody out. Only one company stitched me up. there was a company which most people don't even know about. It was called Tandy Name Brand. Now, you know, Tandy had their own stores and they sold their own products.
Yeah.
They also had some stores where they sold name brand products. Okay. And that guy, Hank, his name was, I remember,
Mm.
he agreed to give me an order and he didn't. I took his
Right.
stock back. I had to take his stock back anyway. But he was only one out of all of the retailers. So the net result is I got us trading again at a big cost, but that wasn't my fault. The thing is that Medi Ali did not know about it.
Right.
See, because Commodore, they had no external auditing.
Right.
So they believed whatever they were told.
Yeah.
Right now, for example, let's talk about the Netherlands. A managing director for the Netherlands was a guy called Bernard van Tienen. He's passed away now, so I don't mind talking about him. He was an absolute crook. At every single general managers meeting we had, he would brag that he had not made his target. So at the last day of the quarter, he would write invoices, invent invoices, put the product on a truck and send it on a journey for 4 or 5 days, and then put it back into stock again at the start of the next quarter,
Right.
quarter after quarter after quarter. So the Commodore doesn't know that they're not sales, does not know that the money's not in the bank.
Mm.
So you can understand why I mean, obviously they didn't have, they had a very poor financial controller because he should have known all those things, right? So you add that, and then you add what Jim Dion had done. I think it was about $760,000 worth of stock I ended up taking back,
Right.
but I sold $760,000 worth of 500. So I mean, I balanced, if you like, but it was a nightmare for Commodore because not only did they not have that money in the bank, which Jim Dion had claimed commission for, of course, and bonus, when he
Right.
had no right to do that. Um, but they also had all of this stock, which in all sorts of condition. Having been out in the retail stores, I don't know what they end up doing with that. That was not really my problem. But anyway, I got us trading, and then I'd been there exactly 11 months, and I went to Medi Ali and I said, "Right, Medi, my job here for the moment is done. What are you talking about?" I said, "Look, I've got us trading, and we're trading successfully." I said, "Now, the thing is," I said, "you and I both know we have got 1,200 coming out in a few months' time.
Mm.
If I stay here and keep selling to my customers, the moment the 1,200 is announced, they're going to ask me to take back 500s because we've shown that we do it. We exposed ourselves. We don't want to do that." I said, "Now, if I leave now and they themselves just reorder, they won't have that leverage on us."
Yeah. Yeah.
Which made sense. I mean, there's me thinking ahead. So I left my role as I was vice president of consumer products, came back to and operated out of the UK, and I had to pick up all the CEL stuff because when I left CEL, they gave half the accounts to the UK and half the accounts to the Dutch company, and they completely screwed everything up. So I went back there again. And helped to get it back on track again. But what I remember, it was I can't remember what the day of the week it was, but it was very, very early in the morning, and I'm in Athens. I'd just signed up a new distributor, and I had the mother of hangovers. We'd just gone out, we'd signed up everything, and we'd gone out, and we were on Ouzo all night.
Oh.
Phone call early in the morning from Betty Hattie. "I want you in London now." I had no choice. And so there am I dragging myself with the mother of a hangover back to London. We got to London. He said, "Right, David," he said, "we are in major financial trouble." He said, "I know that the UK is our strongest business." And he said, "I know that you built it." He said, "I want you to take over as managing director as of today. No excuses." Because I'd actually turned it down before.
Mm. Yeah.
Just about a month after I moved to CEL in Switzerland, and remember I'd moved my wife and two kids there. I was flown to New York to meet Mediati, and my then managing director in the UK was Steve Franklin, who was a young guy, and of course he and I were really close because he'd given me the room to do the Batman pack and stuff. But anyway, he'd been found out as being a crook, which
Mm.
didn't know about. So Mehdi Ali is sort of quizzing me. What do you know about our service company? Hmm, I don't know. There'd just been a point that I didn't know anything about them. I kind of knew the name. What do you know about this? What do you know about that? Now, luckily for me, I genuinely did not know what was going on. I was shocked. Anyway, they fired Franklin straight away because he was getting a backhand from all of these companies,
Right.
right? Which I didn't know at the time. No, Steve is dead now as well, sadly. But anyway, I convinced Mehdi that I didn't know anything about it, and I genuinely didn't. And so he said, right, I want you to take over. And I said, no. I said, you just give me the best job in the world at CEO. I love what I'm doing. And I'm a hunter, not a farmer. So I turned it down. So anyway, here we are back in London again. And he said, right, you are MD, no excuses. And I said, okay. Because he said, what we need now, we need money coming in. We
Mm.
need to fight our bankruptcy. And I said, okay. I said, I'm not a financial guy. I said, yes, I can read a balance sheet, of course, but I'm not a financial guy. My expertise is sales and marketing, and I'm very good at it. So I said, who's looking after finance in the UK? And it was a guy called Colin Proudfoot, who I didn't know. He'd been recruited while I was away. And I said, okay, let's make Colin joint MD. He looks after the finance side of things, and I'll look after the sales and marketing. I didn't know him. I didn't know if we could get on with him or anything.
Mm.
So that's why I became joint MD at my request. And it just turned out that Colin and I hit it off big time. We just one of those matches made in heaven. It was really, really good. And anyway, we did everything we could, but obviously we could not stem off the inevitable failure. But the things, for example, like we launched the 1200, and then, in fact, the 1200 was launched just before I came back to the UK, so I wasn't actually at the launch. That was held in, what was it called? There's a hotel in Knightsbridge where they've got a roof garden. I can't think of
Right.
what it's called. Anyway, it was held there, and Jonathan Ross was the presenter there. We hired him, but I wasn't there. Anyway, and the 1200 was already launched, and I'd got sales booked, everything we could make between then, which I think was about July. But I got already got orders in house for the 1200, um, everything we could make.
Mm.
And then Mehdi Ali said to me, right, I want you to launch the CD32 ahead of time in September. And I said, you're crazy. He said,
Mm.
no, he said, I need the extra sale. I said, Mehdi, you will not get extra sales. All that will happen is that the retailers will cancel their 1200 orders and replace them with CD32s. If we do, I said, and not only that, I put development kits in all the software houses, all the good ones. They're all writing games specifically for the CD32, and they're not ready. They'll be ready when we plan to launch, which is spring, summer next year.
Yeah.
That's when they'll be ready. So I said, if we launch the CD32, then we are going to get absolutely hammered because all they will do is they'll very quickly port over existing games, and people will be really angry that they've got a CD32 that you can't use any software for it that utilizes the technical advances. Anyway, he wouldn't listen. Absolutely refused to listen.
I've got a quick question, actually. Sorry to interrupt you there.
No, please don't worry. Always.
You had a meeting with Ian Etherington from Psygnosis,
Yeah,
and he mentioned that he suggested some changes to the CD32 that would
yeah,
make it better for game development.
yeah.
And so you mentioned that in the book, but you didn't mention what that was. What did he suggest?
Well, I can't remember the technicalities because remember, I openly admit I'm a technical dumbass.
All right, okay.
I really am. I mean, I think that's the reason why I'm thankfully so proficient at sales and marketing is because I don't let the technicalities stand in the way. If
Right,
somebody wants to know, I'll tell you what this will deliver to you. If you want to know how it does it, I'll bring in somebody who can tell you that, right?
right.
But anyway, no, what happened was that Signosis asked me to bring Matty Ali up to them. He didn't want to go, but I dragged him up there kicking and screaming. And so Ian Hetherington said, right, Med, he said, I've got your development kit here, he said, and been looking at the technical sides of it. He said, and I've discovered that if you make that little change here and you do that little thing there and you do that there, it'll be a much better product.
Mm.
Now, most people would have said, look, I'm not a technical person. I'm not the right person to talk to. How about I get Dave Haney or somebody to call you up and you go through it with them and be very grateful.
Mm.
He didn't do that. He lost the plot. He thought he was being talked down to,
Mm.
which shows how ignorant he was. And in the end, I had to just drag him away. It was bloody awful. It was embarrassing like hell. Now, I don't know what those technical changes were, but then think about this. A few months later, Psygnosis sold out to Sony, and Ian Hetherington became head of Sony PlayStation.
Right, yeah.
What you go figure. Basically, Ian was offering us that technology, and because of the reactions of Mediali, he blew it.
Right.
I mean, you couldn't think of it, could you? If it was a novel, you couldn't think of it. You just
Jeez.
couldn't. Yeah. So getting back to, because I think this is the juicy bit really, is that getting back to the launch of the CD32, which, trust me, I was so reluctant to do.
Mm.
But we were told, do it. So I have to do what I was told. So the first thing that happened was that Dawn Levac, she was my marketing manager, fantastic, fantastic lady. She booked us into the Science Museum to do the launch, which I thought
Mm.
was incredible. Very good idea. Now I picked the 16th of September. Why? Because my gimmick was going to be 16 will never be the same again,
Right.
because we were launching a 32-bit product, right?
Mm.
Which is what happened. And our invitations had a boot kicking 16 into the space. Yeah, it's really good. Now, talk about serendipity. Being forced to launch the CD32 as I was, I could not believe it. When about 3 weeks before we were due to launch, there was an article in PC, I think it was PC Week, where the journalist had spoken to Tom Kalinske,
Mm.
who was the worldwide president of Sega, and he said, the journalist said, "What about 32-bit CD-based games consoles?" And Tom Kalinske said, "Can't be done. If anybody could do it, it would be Sega, and it can't be done." Thank you, God, because it was in print. So then we decided on we would have a bit of an attack with them, because that gave us the authority. And so we designed for when we had our launch, we had a voiceover of somebody who sounded like Tom Kalinske talking in a big booming voice and everything. And then we opened the curtains and there's the CD32 and it's going to be in your stores in 2 weeks' time. Right, that was fantastic. Now, then just get this. About another week later, guy rings me up and he says, David, he said, you won't remember me. He said, but we've done business before. He said, we have poster sites all over the country. He said, you've used us before and you know how we work. He said, when you book a site for us, we take 50% up front. And then the week that your campaign starts, we'll take the other 50%. He said, now I've got three prime London location sites that a guy has paid up half the money and now does not want to go ahead. And I'm glad to offer them to you for the half of the price that's owed.
Mm.
Oh, by the way, one of them was right outside Sega's head office. Now, can you believe that? I mean, seriously. So, of course, so I went to our, I think, I'm not sure it was our advertising agency or our PR company. I'm not sure, but anyway, one of them came up with, why don't we run this advert? Have you got the balls? Because Sega's advert used to be, if you on television, used to be this good takes ages. And then to be this good, they spin the word around, takes Sega. Clever, very clever.
Mm.
So we put up to be this good will take Sega ages. And that went right outside Sega's head office. Right? Now, of course, we had no internet then, so no, it didn't go. It went viral, but I don't know how.
Mm.
And anyway, a couple of weeks after that was, well, maybe I think it was in November. We had the industry dinner. We used to have this thing called Indian, um, that we all went to every year at the Gloucester Hotel. And we'd raise money for charity and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, I was there and I had about three or four tables, and Sega, Nick Alexander was the MD of Sega. I mean, you got to remember, in these days, this was still a cottage industry,
Yeah, yeah.
and we all knew each other. I mean, Nick Alexander and I would be competitors in the daytime, but we'd have a beer in the bar at night
Mm.
because it was that so it was so good. Anyway, so Nick was there with his people. He walked over to our table and he said, "A bit close to home, Mr. Pleasance, a bit close to home." And I just said, "Well, Nick, where needs must, where needs must." And never another word was said. They were seething. They were so angry. But it was true. They couldn't argue about it. It was true. But talk about serendipity. I mean, that was amazing luck. Really, really good luck. So yeah, we had Chris Evans was our co-presenter at the time. And I mean, I can send you pics of the advert. I can send you pics of Chris Evans at this if you want it, if
Hmm.
it's of any use to you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I can do that after we finish. But yeah, so unfortunately, everything I predicted came true. The dealers cancelled out a lot of 1200 orders, and they couldn't. Then we could not get CD32s. We couldn't get enough of them. Um, so let's go back on a couple of things. I mentioned about how we had 40 PC engineers,
Hmm.
right? Well, Mehdi had just a few couple of weeks earlier recruited a new head of engineering. He recruited this guy, whose name was Bill Sidness. Now, Bill's claim to fame was he was responsible for the PC Junior, considered to be the biggest flop in computer history. Right? So Mehdi recruited him, and he gave jobs to 40 of his mates.
God. Right.
That was the reason. Now, at the same time as Mehdi recruited him, he recruited the head of manufacturing, new head of manufacturing. Now, this guy, I don't even know his name. This guy convinced Mehdi that we should open up a plant to manufacture the CD32 in the Philippines. Now, I thought to myself, this is a bit strange. Why in God's name would we open a manufacturing facility into the Far East where we sell nothing? Not just a
Hmm.
small amount. We don't sell anything into the Far East. That's a facility which is 5 weeks by sea from the core market, which is Europe.
Yeah.
Why would we do it? It turns out that the guy he recruited had been working in the Philippines for his previous company, and he had a mistress there.
Right.
And that's why he convinced Mediani to open up this facility in the Philippines. I mean, it's totally unbelievable, isn't it?
Jeez.
So you can see the challenges and the traumas that I faced
Hmm.
because I mean, I'm running a business and doing pretty well. I made some mistakes, of course. I'm certainly no angel. I certainly made some mistakes in my time, but overall, my performance was far greater than any other subsidiary in the group, and we proved it time after time after time that what how we were doing things was the right way to do it. Because if you take those 64 packs for example, we outsold everybody else for a long, long time. When I go to Mediani and say let's do this across Europe, he wouldn't do it. Now I said to him, look, because his rationale, well, he had no rationale, but what he did was he gave every subsidiary a percentage of their turnover for marketing.
Right.
And they could hang on, I'll just close this up. Can you see that?
No.
Oh,
No.
that's okay. That's okay then. Yeah. So oh man. Yeah. He gave each subsidiary a percentage. Like uh, we were doing £100 million turnover, and I got 5%. So I had a £5 million a year advertising budget, which is pretty healthy. Um, But he'd say he'd give France 3%, he'd give Germany probably 5%, Italy, whatever. And so they're allowed to do whatever they wanted with it. There was no cohesion whatsoever. And
Hmm.
I just could never understand that because we were a global brand, but there was no cohesion whatsoever. Now, what kind of triggered it for me was that I took my wife and kids to, we used to have a place in Spain, and I took them for a holiday in Spain. And we arrived at Heathrow, and there was a big advert for Sony and a message. I can't remember what it was, but we landed in Malaga. There's exactly the same message in Spanish,
Mm.
and that's global branding.
Yeah.
So I went to Matt. He said we should be doing that because let's say, for example, let us design a pack. We got a really good 64 pack, like we were the first, I think, ever to have a mouse in the pack. I had this product called Neos Mouse and Cheese. It was an art package that was
Mm.
in the connoisseur collection. So what if we design a package and then we design all the artwork and it's done in multiple languages? Then we send the artwork to each subsidiary. They get it printed locally, and they make and they got everything sent to them locally. So that would save an absolute fortune.
Mm.
He wouldn't do it. So one day he rings me up. Pleasance, I'm going to grant you your wish. He said that a lot. Which wish is this then? He said, I've just hired an international marketing guy, and he has hired a consumer products guy and a business systems guy. Give them all the help that you can. I said, yeah, great, fantastic, back bloody time. So anyway, this guy, I don't even know what his name was, the international guy. Instead of coming, we were in Maidenhead by then, and we'd got space. Instead of coming to use our offices, which he should have done, he rented very expensive, exclusive offices in central London. He ordered himself a bespoke office furniture suite, which I think was £170,000, right? And then the consumer guy rang me up and he said, David, I understand that you're the person who knows all about the consumer side. I said, yeah, can I come and talk to you? I said, absolutely. You're very welcome. As God is my witness, that guy came and he sat across my desk for 14 minutes. He asked me two or three inane questions, said I've got everything I need and disappeared.
Jeez.
I've never seen him since.
Mm.
They all disappeared into the ether, but they spent an absolute fortune of Commodore's money and delivered nothing. I
Yeah.
mean, zero. I mean, it's hard to believe, isn't it? It's so hard to believe. Incredible. Anyway, these are all, these are the things that, as I understand it, right now, there are a couple of universities around the world who are using the Commodore the Inside Story, my book, which tells all about this, as a discussion in the business lectures about how not to run a business,
Right. Yeah.
which makes sense if you think about it,
Commodore tried to get in. I mean, they did get into the PC market, didn't they? But it never really, like a lot of people, it never really sort of took off, did it? Um, why do you think that was? Is it just the Asian market was a bit too, they could produce them a lot faster and cheaper?
Yeah, I think it's all part and parcel of this whole problem that Commodore did not really have a business plan.
Yeah.
And I mean, the fact that they recruited all of these engineers to redesign the wheel, basically, proved that they did not have they didn't have a grasp of it.
Yeah.
Um, let's be honest about it. At one time, the name CBM was as valuable as IBM.
Yeah.
It really was. And I don't know if you know, we actually did a pack for Commodore PCs. Did you know
Mm.
that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we did the PC 10, 20, and 30 packs.
Yeah.
Now that's an interesting story in itself, if you want to know it, because that was not my product. That was in the business systems division. I had
Yeah.
no budget to do it, right? So what happened is that when we did some design work with which my design company, Design Directions, who did all the packaging for us, they come up with a design for this product, and we needed what I wanted on the outside of the pack was people in identifiable work positions that you could not relate to. So, for example, we had a builder with a hard hat, we had a nurse, we had a professor. Everybody, all these figures were photographs of people on the pack, but I didn't have any budget. I couldn't pay any actors, so I used all my staff and me, and we hired the costumes and we dressed up because it was a cheap thing to do. So it's all of us on these packs. I was the professor, but it was I mean that's the innovation that you have to do, you know.
Mm,
Um, anyway, that it was interesting because the PC-10, 20, and 30, and in typical Commodore style, none of the peripherals would fit all the units. If you bought a PC-10, you had to buy specific peripherals for it. 20, I mean, it was ridiculous. So when we designed the packaging, we put a color banding around the outside of the pack, yellow, pink, or it might have been purple, and green, I think it was. And we did the same with all the peripherals. So if you bought a PC-10 and it had a yellow band, you knew you had to buy a peripheral with a yellow band on it, right?
mm.
But I mean, we thought these things through pretty well. Anyway, I got a phone call from one of my dealers. It was also an IBM dealer. And he said, David, I just want to let you know, IBM have just come in and bought one of each of your packs to see what you're doing. Because we had a VHS video inside showing you how to put it together. Because do you remember, nobody knew how to even do it. You had to buy all these components separately. Nobody knew how to even set it up.
Mm,
So we had a video design, and we used Tim Brooke Taylor from the Goodies.
mm.
And we also had a secretary, and she was a black girl, which we picked on purpose. So that video showed you how to put it all together, which was very, very unique. Nobody had done anything like it before. Um, But there was something else I was going to tell. Oh yeah, what I want to tell you is that as an adjunct to launching the Batman pack, and I told you I wanted to make sure I killed Atari. I also set up a whole marketing program with all the independent dealers. And what we did is because I had distributors. I think I had 4 distributors who used to sell to all the independent dealers because Commodore did not want hundreds of accounts.
Mm.
So we would have ZCL, I can't remember the names of the other ones. Yeah, Zappo. Anyway, I specifically went and recruited SDL because they were Atari's distributor, right?
Right.
So I went to them all. Individually, I went to them and I said, right, I've got a new program. I'm going to give you an additional 2% marketing, but you've got to match it from your funds. And what we're going to do is we're going to give every single Commodore product some points. We're going to set a target, and if the dealers sell enough to reach a certain number of points, we're going to take them on some fantastic trip, right? So the first one that we did was having to do with lightning distribution. And I think we took 36 dealers. We took them to Mexico City and then Acapulco,
Wow.
right? And at that time in Acapulco, we stayed in the Acapulco Princess, which was in the top 5 hotels in the world then. For example, in all the swimming pools, there was flamingos living in the pools.
Bloody hell.
It was sensational. So, and we laid everything on. I mean, we did everything. We took them on a beautiful cruise in Acapulco Bay. We went to a restaurant in a castle up on a hill overlooking. Everything was incredible. On our last night, which we held outside, we hired the Ballet Folklorico de Mexico to come and do traditional Mexican dance for us. And this was the real McCoy.
Mm.
And so they came and did a whole session for us, and then we ended the night with a big fireworks display, and it came up in fireworks, Commodore and Lightning, all written fireworks. I mean, trust me, it was the business. The net result, of course, is that as soon as these 36 dealers went home, they rang up their mates who didn't go and say, "You don't know what you missed. This was incredible." And because we kept on doing more and more and more, our dilemma was finding where else do we take them because to make sure it was good. But the net result of that, of course, was anybody went into one of those dealer stores and said, "I want an Atari." They said, "No, you don't. You want an Amiga, right?" So we outsold, we killed the ST.
Mm.
So this is the whole point about marketing. Marketing, I look at it like it's a jigsaw puzzle,
Mm.
and if any one piece is missing, you ain't got the whole picture.
Yeah.
So by having a great pack, very visually attractive and right up to date, in conjunction with the launch of a movie that everybody went to see,
Mm,
and then having this incentive to the dealers to sell your product, it was a surefire winner.
yeah. Mm. Tell us, it's a great story about the Commodore Plus 4 in the
Right?
book. Do you want to relate that to us?
Sure, yeah. First of all, can I say that in the 12 and a half years that I worked at Commodore, even with the results that we were getting, never once, never once did anybody from Commodore come and say, what does the market need? What would you like us to produce? What's the price point we need to meet? Anything like
Mm,
that. They
yeah.
never even asked, right? Which again comes back to the fact that they never had a business plan.
Yeah.
So one day I get 10,000 plus four shipped into my warehouse. Now, who in God's name wanted a plus four? Because the software on it was impotent,
Mm,
probably the best word I can use. You know that. It was not, spreadsheet and word processor and fine. It was rubbish. Now that was designed to sell for £399. That was built for and costed out to sell three. No way in God's earth would you ever get £399 for it. So it festered and festered and festered. And then it just reminded me of another part of this story, which I need to tell you about. This particular Christmas, I can't remember what year it was, but anyway, this guy comes into my office and he sat at my desk. He put his feet up on my desk
mm.
and was picking his nose. I swear to you on my life, I could see it like it was yesterday. And he said, I've got 25 million quid. I'm going to buy all your Commodore 64s. And I said, sorry, all sold, all pre-sold.
Mm.
And anyway, he rambled on and on and on and on. He said, I can't fucking believe I got all this money and you want that money. I said, everything's already sold. It's all pre-ordered and, with my current retailers. It turns out he was representing Greens and they decided they wanted to get a monopoly. Anyway, he was just about to leave. He said, I can't believe there ain't anything you can sell me. I said, have you heard of the Plus 4? No. So I said, right. And what had happened was that I told you about Nick Bessie coming in, right? It was that sort of
Mm,
that around that time. Nick had come to me and said, "What are we going to do about these plus fours we got? We got to get rid of them." And he said, "Can we incentivize the guys?" I said, "Look, they've tried everything." I said, "And money." I said, "We can't sell them. Nobody wants them."
mm,
So he said, "Perhaps if we tried something other than money as an incentive." I said, "Yeah, what have you got in mind?" He said, "What about some champagne?" So, well, that might turn them on. So
mm.
anyway, the net result was that the next day I went to Lasky's as it happens, and I sold the whole 10,000 to them. But the idea was it was a £99 pack with 10 cassette games in it,
Right.
99 quid, but they'd take the whole lot. Oh, no, no, uh, no, they were going to take 2,000, I think it was. But then this guy came in and I sold him the whole 10,000 pieces. So I had to then go back to Lasky's and renege on the deal. They were
Right.
pretty good about it. I said, look, I've got a chance to sell the whole lot,
Mm,
and with the greatest respect, I have to do this. And they were fine about it because everything I said was the truth.
yeah.
Anyway, so we did this £99 pack and we started shipping into Greens and they were selling like hotcakes. So they came back and said, can we get some more? Because that was around October time. And I said, so then I got in touch with Commodore International and we bought in all the components and all the stock from around the world because we had an assembly operation then at Corby. So we put all of these plus rolls together and we
Mm,
sold a whole lot into Greens. So then with Tom Hart, who is then my boss, we went in because the plus four had its own dedicated peripheral line,
yeah. Yeah.
printers and monitors and disk drives, all that dark grey. We went in and sold them everything.
Right.
I mean, it was incredible. We came out of that place. We were doing cartwheels in the car park. I'm telling you, it was incredible. Now, of course, when everybody got their presents at Christmas, which is what people had bought them for, £99 for them, they had to 10 games. After a week or two, they wanted to buy new games. It wasn't until then that it was obvious that the Plus 4 was not compatible with the 64 software. That guy had never, ever asked me. So I didn't
Hmm.
tell him a lie. He'd never asked me. And why did I need to tell him? Anyway, it didn't matter when they sold everything, but that was the thing. I mean, I can see this guy now with his leg, his feet up on my desk, picking his nose. I can't believe I can't spend 25 effing million pounds with you. Well, I sold him everything. That was so good.
Well, obviously, Commodore, ate the skids, isn't it, eventually? And you tried to do a sort of reverse buyout, didn't you? What happened there?
Yeah, it was a management buyout. Basically,
Yeah.
what happened was that after a while, because Colin Proudfoot and I had worked so well together,
Hmm.
we knew that we could do a much better job than Commodore had ever done. We just knew because we knew the business so well. So we went to Coopers and Lybrand, who at that stage they'd just done a big management buyout, successful for um, uh, what were they called? The bus company. Oh, I can't think what they were called.
Stagecoach?
What was that?
Was it Stagecoach?
No, no, they're still trading today. The big, very big bus company that do buses all over the place. I can't think of what they were called. Goodness me.
It's not National Express, is it? Something like
No, 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 no. Um, oh, it'll come to me. But anyway, they were proven that they were really good at managing buyout things,
that? Hmm.
and so we contacted them, and then Colin and I sat and we worked out on a business plan, and our advertising agency, who they said you can use our offices. And use anything you need from us to help you put the business plan together. They were fantastic. And so anyway, we raised $50 million.
Wow.
And the way that was structured was um, there was two high wealth individuals and one guy who represented three high wealth individuals. And between them, they had $25 million to invest based on our business plan. We also then got in touch with uh, a Chinese manufacturing company. And this is doing my head in. I'm going to turn my phone right off.
Yeah.
Just bear with me. That's better. Yeah, Chinese manufacturing company called New Star Electronics. And they, up until that time, they had been ripping off Sega and Nintendo products and selling them into China without paying any license fees.
Uh,
But they'd been told by the Chinese government, you've got to get legitimate because China wanted to join GATT and all these other things. So anyway, we signed them up. They were going to be half of the money. They were going to be 25 million bucks. But it would have been fantastic because we would then own our own manufacturing in China, right?
yeah.
So they were the absolutely ideal candidates. So we raised the 50 million. Now, 48 hours before the auction in New York, Petro Tichenko, who was ex-Commodore, his role in Commodore, he was a logistics guy. If Commodore UK forecast to sell 10,000 of 500s, he had to make sure I had them there.
Mm. Right.
Right. So his logistics, he was getting stuff where it should be. He was useless at that too, I have to tell you. Anyway, after Commodore went bankrupt, Escom offered him a job. And the reason why they did that was because Escom, in a previous life, a couple of years before, they were a chain of stores who mostly sold musical products, but then added 64 to their range. And the 64 was in high demand. And so Petrodolchenko was close friends with Manfred Schmidt, who was the owner of Escom. And so he made sure he had plenty of stock. So as a return favor, Manfred Schmidt gave him a job at Escom.
Right.
Right? And so anyway, what happened is that we were in New York, Sorry, we were in Westchester doing our due diligence, and New Star Electronics were there. And unbeknown to us, Petro Dachenko lured them away. He said that you can don't go with the UK guys, come with us. You can get it for a lot less than 25 million. Just trust us, which of course they didn't do anyway. They didn't. And so New Star Electronics pulled out 2 days before the auction. Now, people said to us, well, you could still have bought Commodore because it went for 15 million ultimately. And you had 25 million. We said, yeah, but what you don't understand is that there is no way that Commodore would be able to get credit terms because everybody who supplied them had just been burnt big time.
Yeah.
So we knew that we had to finance it ourselves. And Colin Bradford, who is a genius, he really is, he worked out 7 months, 2 weeks, and 2 days, and we would be in a position we would be self-sufficient. But if we'd have bought the company for 15 or say 16 million, because obviously we would have run out of money really quickly. We would have lost everybody's money. And there's no
Yeah.
way we were going to do that. So that's what's happened. That's why I hate Petro Tchenko with a vengeance. And he doesn't even understand why. So he had we were to one of the Amiga events in Germany, and I happened to not be there. He was talking to Colin, and he admitted to Colin that it was him who stole New Star Electronics. If I'd have been there, I would have decked him. I really would,
Mm.
because he ruined. I mean, we'd spent months and months and months on that, and the business plan that we put together, we raised 50 million, and we did not put into the business plan quite a lot of revenue that we knew we could get.
Yeah.
So we had a lot in reserve, you know. That was heartbreaking.
Oh, well, I mean, from the ashes, there's new Commodore things happening, isn't there? Do you want to tell us about those?
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting. As you know, I mean, first of all, I should tell you that after that, I left, I got out of the industry completely.
Right.
I was battered and bruised from all of that. And I changed my whole life. Uh, what I tend to do when I'm stressed, I tend to, what do you do, David, when you're stressed? Go fishing. I love big game fishing. So I actually wanted to go to Mexico, which is where I've caught my biggest fish, and I couldn't get a cheap flight. So I looked and I found a flight to the Dominican Republic, which I'd heard had got good fishing, and it was £99 return.
Oh, right.
So I'll have some of that. So I took this flight to Dominican Republic, landed in Santo Domingo Airport, jumped in a taxi, said, "Take me to the nearest beach." And I was there for a couple of weeks, relaxing and fishing. And then I met my second wife there.
Oh, cool.
She was still married, been separated for a long, long time. And in the Dominican, it's very Catholic and it's very corrupt.
Right. Mm.
So what you have to do is you have to bribe people. So cut a long story short, I moved. I rented my house out. I had a house in Yeti. I rented it out for a year, and I moved out over there for a year, and it was quite good. It wasn't until 2015 I got an email came in to me from Marcel Frankenet, Volker de Gans, and Marvin Droogsma saying, we're putting on an Amiga 30 event in Amsterdam. We'd like you to be a speaker there. How much would you charge? Which came out of the blue. I mean, I'd been out of the industry all those years. So anyway, I replied back to him. I said, well, look, I wouldn't charge anything. I'm not quite sure what you want me to talk about. But I don't think it should cost me any money. So if you're prepared to pay, an EasyJet or a Ryanair flight, excuse me, and a cheap B&B, I'm your man. So anyway, I went over to this event, and I walked through the door of this event, and as God is my witness, I was swamped. All these people saying, "Can I have your autograph? Can I have a selfie?" And I'm sort of they're talking to. I had absolutely zero idea that I was held in such high esteem, and I swear to you, I didn't know. It came as a complete shock. Anyway, so that from that point in time, then I went to the German one a couple of months later, And of course, I'm getting on stage and telling stories. And then people are saying to me all the time, David, you're telling such great stories. Why didn't you write about it? Why didn't you write about it? And I said, look, I never even got my O levels. So I, you know, anyway, I guess, hijacked into writing my first book, The Inside Story, which has
Yeah.
done very, very well. Anyway, getting back to your question, um, I suddenly, probably about 5, 6, maybe 7 weeks ago, got a phone call from this guy, Perry Fractic, Christian Simpson is his real name. And he said, David, I just want to let you know that we're in the process of buying Commodore. Would you endorse us? And I said, no. And he fell off the fell off the chair. He said, what, no, what do you mean? No, I said, I'm not going to endorse you. I want in. I want to be part of this. This has been my dream for ever and ever and ever. You can't do this without me. Net result is I'm in.
Hmm.
And in fact, I got my business cards a couple of days ago. I've just been officially appointed as retail sales director,
Mhm.
and I'm on the payroll, which is the most important thing for me, to be honest with you. Um, and they invited me and paid for me to go to the signing, which was in Holland. I had to fly into Brussels, which is the closest airport, get the train, and I was there for 3 days. We were at the signing. And also, my signature is now on the inside case of the products that we just released, the 64 Ultimate, three different versions of it. And my signature is molded in the inside of the case.
Yeah,
It's
excellent.
really amazing for me. I mean, it really is a dream come true.
So tell us about the Commodore Ultimate then. Is it the same architecture or is it basically like an emulator or how does it work?
Well, uh, it's not an emulator, it's FPSG, but it's got additional features. It's got USB,
Mhm.
it's got HDMI and internet
Right, cool.
built in.
Yeah.
So otherwise, it's a more updated thing, but it looks the same. But again, I'll send you a picture of what the three models look like.
And yeah, there's one that's transparent, isn't there? I had a quick look the other day.
Yeah, yeah, and there's a gold one which is the sort of founder's edition, if you like.
Yeah.
And we put them on sale, I guess about 5 weeks ago. I think it was round about then.
Hmm.
And we've already sold, I think we're probably over the 8,000 mark now.
Wow.
That's actually sold. That's not Kickstarter, that's money in the bank.
Yeah.
Now, Perry and Alex are literally, I think, on today, I think they're on their way to China
Hmm.
to look at the whole, because they're all being produced. Several people are involved. I mean, we've had the support that we've had is incredible. I don't
Yeah.
know if you know, we've even got Leonard Tramiel on board.
Oh, really?
Now, I don't know if you know, but since Commodore's bankruptcy, Leonard in particular has been anti every single thing that Commodore's ever tried to do. He's
Yeah.
been anti. And I'll give you an example of that. When I released Commodore: The Inside Story, there were some interviews I did with Dan Wood on video, which were not put in the book, and so we did a DVD and a Blu-ray. But because my history with Commodore was virtually without Jack Tramiel, because I joined in June of '83 and he'd left in I think it was February of '84.
Oh,
And
that's it.
I met him at that. I met him at the Winter CES, and he was on the stand there, shook his hand, and that was it. So I didn't know anything about him. So on my Blu-rays and DVDs, I posted the documentary that Kim Justice had done about Jack Tramiel.
Hmm.
Now, as far as I'm aware, um, that whole documentary was very accurate. Anyway, apparently Leonard Tramiel saw it, and he said it was a load of rubbish.
Right.
So this is an indication of how he's not. And if do you know Michael Tomchik, who was one of Jack Tramiel's, he was his right hand man when they
Hmm.
first started. Um, Leonard keeps, and of course, um, uh, Michael Tomchik was telling everything as far as he knew. Leonard Tramiel kept saying he was lying, it wasn't true, and all the rest of it, which is ridiculous. As a matter of fact, Michael Tomchik is now Perry's assistant.
Right.
And anyway, Leonard Tramiel, he's supporting us, and to the point where he says we said to him, "What do you want to be called?" And he said, "How about uh, CTO?" And obviously everybody balked at that. Commodore Tramiel Officer. So that's what he's now known as, right? But it just shows you the level of support has been phenomenal. Absolutely. I mean, every day I'm getting Facebook messages from people saying, fantastic news, just heard the news. Is there anything we can do to help?
Brilliant.
One after another, after another, after another. So, we've got, I mean, there's always half a dozen toxic trolls
Yeah,
who
yeah.
come up with various things, negative things. But the fact of the matter is, we've bought it, we've paid for it, and we're operating the company, and it's in the best hands it's ever been, in
Where
my
can you,
opinion.
is it Commodore.net that you can buy these machines from?
Yes, Commodore.net is the shop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, excellent.
That we're also Commodore International, sorry, Commodore-international.com.
Yeah.
I think I should have a look at my own business cards. I don't know I've got them now. I think it's that. I have to put my glasses on for that. Anyway, it's pretty obvious that I'm very, very excited. Yeah,
Hmm,
it's right. Yeah, Commodore-international.com.
excellent. Well, it's been a fascinating talk, David. Thanks for doing this. I'm sure all the Commodore fans will be watching it as well and rooting for it. Excellent stuff. Thanks once again.
No, it's been a great pleasure and any time. And uh, if anybody wants to get hold of me, don't use my Commodore. I want to keep that for business. If you want to get hold of me, the best email is davidamigaman@gmail.com.
Excellent.
Yeah. So anybody wants to talk to me, anything at all, use that one, not the Commodore one, because I need to keep that separate for the actual business things. Yeah.
Right. Excellent, mate.
davidamigaman@gmail.com.
Right. Okay, mate. Well, thanks again. Thank you.
Well, great pleasure indeed. Yeah.